What is up, y'all? This is James Hancock here, and I am probably making a huge mistake trying to record a video right now because I've been drinking scotch the last few hours, recording an episode from a podcast, Wrong Reel, with my buddy Orest Ludwig. We were talking about the Highlander, so we figured, of course, if you're talking about the Highlander, you have to drink, something from the Highlands. So we drank single malt. But I don't want today to go by without posting a video. I made a vow that I was going to try to do a video a day for a year, and I know there's no way I'm going to be able to maintain that, but while I've got the interest and the desire, I'm just going to keep plowing on through. So I do want to talk a little bit about a cool indie flick that is opening this weekend called Wiener Dog from director Todd Solondz. I've heard him also pronounced as Todd Solondz, but in interviews it always seems like it's Todd Solondz. So that's how I'm going to pronounce him. For people who don't know who Todd Solondz is, he was one of the best American filmmakers to emerge in the kind of the indie revolution of the 1990s. It was not his first feature, but his film Welcome to the Dollhouse launched him into immediate indie film celebrity in a lot of ways. And then his follow-up film, Happiness, for a lot of people is one of the most disturbing films of that era. I don't necessarily find it disturbing, even if it does explore some really, really dark material. I think people misinterpret Todd Solondz as being a guy who's trying to disturb or upset people, but for me, in a lot of ways, he actually makes movies that celebrate society's misfits in ways that pretty much no other filmmaker alive is willing to do or is courageous enough to do. So, yeah, if you want to make a movie about someone with Down syndrome or a club foot or someone who's just unimaginably not attractive and will never be able to have sex, in their entire lives, like Todd Solondz is the guy to tell the story from their perspective because he is the best in the business at describing these misfits. And I met him briefly once I was at the Angelica, and I was waiting in line to buy like an espresso or something like that, and I heard this weird little voice behind me looking for the manager of the theater, and I turned around and there he was, and I was like, oh my God, such a privilege to meet you. I really love your movies. And he teaches at NYU. He teaches film classes, and he teaches nearby. And I was like, oh, I'm so jealous of all your film students. And he said, well, I don't know if my students would agree. I mean, like he basically is one of his characters in his movies, which kind of brings me full circle to Wiener Dog, because this is an episodic kind of series of vignettes, and one of the stories is very clearly based on his own experiences as a film teacher. But Wiener Dog is kind of a spiritual sequel to Welcome to the Dollhouse. Like, everyone assumed that it was going to be another movie about Dawn because of the name. Wiener Dog is the nickname of the central character in Welcome to the Dollhouse. And Greta Gerwig does play Dawn Wiener in this, but it's been a long time since I watched Palindromes. But Palindromes does have the funeral of the character Dawn, so I don't quite know how that works out in terms of continuity, or if it even really matters, because in the end, Todd Solondz is probably not necessarily that wrapped up in like comic book continuity. He's more interested in telling stories about interesting people. He is a guy who likes to shine a light on stories that pretty much no one else is going to tell, whether it's a movie like Storytelling or The Dark Horse or Life During Wartime. He's got his own little corner of the indie film world, and it's sad to see him kind of working with not larger, this is how drunk I am, but he's working with smaller and smaller budgets, less and less reach. I don't know if he'll continue to have the opportunity to make movies, but then again, we've got 20 years of Todd Solondz movies to enjoy, which is more than a lot of filmmakers can lay claim to. But essentially, this movie covers 4 main stories that all featured this one Wiener Dog who kind of travels. It's almost like Max Ophuls' old film, like The Earrings of Madame De, and I'm sure there are a lot of other movies. And there's also like Winchester 73 by Anthony Mann. But these movies where you don't follow a character, but you follow like an item and the people that it interacts with during that time. So Wiener Dog is a movie in that tradition. But it's pretty dark, bleak, funny stuff, as one could expect from a Todd Solondz movie. The first vignette deals with a child who has the Wiener Dog and is getting it spayed and not necessarily taking the best care of it because of misfeeding it and that sort of thing, but having a lot of fun playing with it. And then it moves on to Greta Gerwig's character, who goes on this road trip with Kieran Culkin, who's telling different family members about the death of his father. The third vignette deals with Danny DeVito, who is playing the character loosely based on Todd Solondz. At least that's my interpretation, because he is a film teacher at NYU or a school like that who's also working in the film industry. And the last story deals with blanking on the actress's name. It's the girl from the actor Ellen Burstyn. Ellen Burstyn. And basically, she's an aging woman who's visited by her granddaughter and her boyfriend who's asking for money. And she's thinking about what might have been had her life gone in different ways. You know, you can make a case for some of these stories being stronger than others. My favorite was probably the Danny DeVito one, just because it felt the most personal. It definitely shows, you know, the challenges of being a film teacher while at the same time trying to survive in an industry. He has all these incredible calls with his agent who's changing agencies and going to a new studio, and then it's just it's classic kind of industry talk where they'll call you up and say they have good news, but the good news they want to share is of course about their own careers, not about the screenplay that you've been asking them to read. And the best is just watching like this generation clash between Danny DeVito, who's a very story-driven teacher, and his students who are very obsessed with identity politics and things like that, and, you know, white male patriarchy and being gay. But basically it's a lot of just identity focused issues, and they're just not necessarily seeing eyeball to eyeball. And of course all of his students think that he's irrelevant and that he's a homophobe and all these various things. And I don't know, it's funny because Todd Solondz, he'll take a scenario and subvert it in these incredibly unexpected ways, where he never takes it into a place where he's either celebrating or condemning his characters. It's kind of like he's really, really good at seeing past all the illusions and bullshit that we all cling to. I don't care if you're left, right, and center politically, gay, straight, young, old, full of shit, like, you know, humanitarian, or totally in it for yourself. He kind of is able to lay everybody low in the same way that cuts past all the bullshit. And it's like, no matter what you think you are, this is what you really are. And it's very, very refreshing. It's very, very honest. Some people find it disturbing, but I don't think it's disturbing. I think it's just he sees the world with a very distinct point of view, and he explores that through all these different scenarios with his characters. Now, I'm not going to say that Wiener Dog is his best movie. I don't think it's remotely close to Todd Solondz' best movie, but for me, even when Todd Solondz is not firing on all cylinders, he's still one of my favorite directors alive today because he has his own stamp and his own perspective and his own point of view. And I feel like anytime he makes a movie, that's a good thing. I mean, for me personally, his best movies are Welcome to the Dollhouse and Happiness. I mean, who knows? Maybe he would even agree with that assessment himself. But every movie of his I've seen is worth watching. I've seen all of his movies except for his debut feature, which I don't even know the name of it. But as soon as I heard that his first movie, Welcome to the Dollhouse, was originally supposed to be called Faggots and Retards, it's like, all right, this guy's... he's not playing the same game as everybody else, and I should support this guy, and I should watch his movies and see what he's all about. So, at any rate, I don't know how widespread Wiener Dog's distribution is going to be. I mean, I think it might only be playing in one theater in New York now at the Angelica, which is right in the heart of NYU, so it's kind of the perfect place for him. But I never want to say, please support this filmmaker, because I feel like if a filmmaker doesn't make films that are compelling enough for you to want to see, they're kind of not playing the game. I mean, in the end, film is a commercial art form, and I don't support comedy. I buy a ticket and see comedy. Or I don't support novelists. I buy their books that I want to read. And same thing with movies. I quote unquote support filmmakers by voting with my dollars. If I buy a ticket or a DVD or a download, I'm essentially voting to support their career. But I never really liked the idea of supporting the arts. I feel like whether it's a video game, comic book, stand-up comedy, movie, whatever, they should create a compelling reason for why we should get behind them and support their art form, for lack of a better word. But I do hope people will go see this movie, because I feel like if Todd Solondz were to retire, it would deprive us of a very honest, bordering on cynical point of view that independent cinema far too rarely embraces. I feel like there are a lot of independent films that are kind of masquerading as independent films just because they are low budget. But just because you're low budget doesn't mean you have an independent spirit. There are a lot of low budget movies that embrace really, really conventional, boring, cookie cutter styles of storytelling. But because they're low budget, everyone says, oh, well, it must be, part of the independent spirit. Like, independent is not a matter of scale or budget. Independent is a matter of attitude and perspective and what material you're willing to explore. So yeah, Todd Solondz, he's a dark motherfucker, but I love his movies, and I encourage everybody to watch all of his movies. Just start Welcome to the Dollhouse. then Much Happiness, then Storytelling, then Palindromes. I think after that it's Life During Wartime, and then Dark Horse. Am I missing one? That might be all of them. And then, of course, Wiener Dog. Just rip right through his filmography. He's a singular voice in the world of movies. And hope you enjoy Wiener Dog. But at any rate, anytime Greta Gerwig makes a movie, it's a movie well worth seeing because I absolutely adore her. She's fantastic. So anyway, if you like this video, please remember to subscribe to my channel. Please click like, all that good stuff. And if you want to talk more, you can contact me on Twitter at Colbrax. And I look forward to being back at you in the very near future. So long, folks.